how tough has 2020 been for all of us? But more importantly, I want to ask you this. What kind of challenges have you specifically faced the first 7 months of 2020? I want you to make this in the privacy of your own self. What kind of challenges have absolutely ate you up this year? Because here's the thing, a lot of times we can read Bible scriptures, we can read stories, and we miss so many applications because we think it only goes one certain way. But what I want to read this morning is out of Daniel 3. It's in the Old Testament, and it's a very, very cool story. It's about these three guys named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And what they were doing is they were Jews in Babylon, and there was this king named Nebuchadnezzar, and he had this mandate that he set out and said, hey, everyone who's in this land must bow down and worship these idols and these gods and this gold that I made. Word gets back to Nebuchadnezzar that these three Jewish men who were following Yahweh said, we're not going to do that because that violates what we're about, and we would rather bow down before the one true King, the one true Lord, and not these other things. We're willing to serve you, but there has to come this line that we draw in the sand. And so I want to read that and kind of just apply it towards what a lot of us are facing and make it our own situational troubles that we're going through. So Daniel 3 verses 17 and 18. So they are brought before the king, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego say, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, that was the punishment for not bowing down to these fake gods. They said, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, so here we see this little transition. Even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, there's a little bit of sarcasm, a little bit of shade thrown his way, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. So it's this idea that's saying, hey, we believe in our God, we know that he's going to come through, but even if it doesn't match up our expectations, we are willing to die in that furnace, the death that we know that will be pleasing to him in our faithfulness and obedience because he is worthy of it. See, love costs us something. And when you worship a God, when you worship whoever you think God is, if it never requires anything of you, I would really challenge you to ask yourself, who are you really worshiping, yourself or the true God? Because here's the thing, God never told them, hey, go and do this. They took the initiative of saying, because God's so good, because he's been so faithful to us, because he is trustworthy and worthy of all praise, and even that's not enough, we are willing to say, hey, we're betting our money that he's going to show up, but even if he doesn't, it's all good. Can you say that about your relationship? Do you have this unconditional praise for him? Or do you just worship him when things are going good? Or do you only go to him when things are going bad, on the opposite spectrum of things? You see, you got to have this active relationship with your Father. A.W. Tozer, this theologian in the 1900s, put it this way. He said, to be right with God has often meant to be in trouble with men. See, a lot of times when we're following Jesus, we're automatically going to irritate some people. Not that we're doing things to create tension, but because people want us to follow them. And see, when Christ is your number one, when you're following Yahweh, the Lord, the Father, the great I am, there's going to be situations that arise where you're like, I just can't do that because that is not going to be God-honoring. Now, I'm not applying to this to the mask mandate or anything. Please obey the government as Christians. But I'm saying, like, in a more of a what's your fiery furnace? What is the thing that you're being threatened to say, hey, it's either God or I give in and get out pretty easily? You see, these three guys could have easily said, okay, we'll bow down and worship whatever. Just, we don't want to be thrown in that furnace. No, they said, because God is so good, we are not willing to do anything other than obey him. And see, here's the thing is, your situational furnace Could be that you're a business owner and your business is about to tank because of the economy. Are you trusting God right now? Are you asking him, hey, God, can you please pull me through this? You could be in a very, very, very bad relationship where it's being strained to the end and you're being stretched out and you're saying, God, I don't know how I'm going to make this. You could be with a friend who's not healthy right now, who could be down with some sort of sickness, whether it be COVID or something else. And you could say, God, it's going to take an act of a miracle to save this person. You could be battling depression, anxiety, an addiction of some sort, and you're saying, am I going to give in, or am I going to cry out to God and say, even if you don't show up, you're worthy of my praise? You see, we gotta deny ourselves and pick up our cross and follow him. These guys had this mindset of unconditional worship. Even in the face of life and death, they said, we're going to be obedient. And if you continue to read Daniel 3, it says that there was a fourth member in that fiery furnace, and that they didn't even smell like fire when they came out alive, and not even a single hair on their head was burned. How crazy is that? So not only did God show up and protect them, but they weren't even harmed. And guess what? Even better, Nebuchadnezzar and the entire region of Babylon bowed down and worshiped this God that they said beforehand that they were going to worship. So people are watching you whether you know it or not. They're looking for you to mess up. Let's just be honest. Let's call it what it is. Whatever you're battling right now, people are looking to see how you react when God doesn't show up the way you want them to. And so when you're struggling in these areas, your character matters a ton. Because you and I are visible reflections of the invisible God. And what does it say about our God if you and I are put merely to the test in the slightest form, if we can't even be obedient? And these guys are being persecuted, and they said, nah, even to that, we would rather burn before you see us bow. There's one name that we bow to. There's one king. There's one throne. There's one kingdom that we belong to. And it's nothing other than Jesus Christ. But you can't live like that unless the Holy Spirit is dwelling inside you and living from the inside out. Do people take notice that there's a difference about you? Have you been radically changed by the best news ever? It's time for us to get up off our tails and get this news out of the back pocket of our pants and get it out to the people who are dying every day to know. It is not the time for us to sit down and cross our arms and wait until the end, whatever that looks like. Be active in your faith and say, whatever this takes, I want God to be glorified. You see, they were saved from the fire even though they weren't sure how it was going to look. It wasn't how they envisioned it. And the same goes for you. You might have a million different ways that you can see something planning out, and God says 1,000,001 ways is how I'm going to bring glory to my name. Are you okay with that? So I want to wrap this up with lyrics from this song called "Even If" by Mercy Me. It's awesome, and he's talking about this very thing, and he says, I know you're able, and I know you can save through the fire with your mighty hand, but even if you don't, my hope is you alone. Man, I pray that we all could say we have that kind of faith that says, hey, even if God doesn't show up, not because he can't, but because he chooses, his glory is going to be sustained in a greater way by whatever this could turn out to be. May we be okay with that and say, it is well with my soul. May our worship be unconditional this week and beyond. Let there be no requirements and prerequisites for you to give God the glory that he is so deserving of. He loves you. He desires to know you. And as the great Pastor J.I. Packer, who just passed away, said, it's not enough for you to know God, but does God know you? I pray that would be your desire this week. Go out and make his name known.